The storm descends. The Galactic Academy's training facilities orbited the gas giant Solarian like gleaming silver beads on an invisible string. For centuries, it had produced the most elite officers in the Confederation, drawing cadets from over 300 sentient species across 5 galactic arms. Competition was fierce, training brutal, and graduation rates hovered around 20%. Only the best survived, mentally, physically, and emotionally. Ilara Chen stood at rigid attention in the shuttle bay, her standard-issue Keda uniform a stark contrast to the varied physiologies of her classmates. At 5'7" with olive skin and close-cropped black hair, she appeared unremarkable beside the towering Valkyrie with their iridescent plumage, the 6-limbed Tresians with their photosynthetic skin, or the gelatinous morphs who continually shifted form like living mercury. As the only human in her class, and one of only 17 humans currently enrolled in the entire academy, Ilara was used to the sidelong glances and whispered comments. Humans were newcomers to the galactic stage, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 83 years ago. Most species viewed them as primitive curiosities, tolerated rather than respected. Attention, 4th years. Commander Zrilx's voice cut through the shuttle bay, his translucent exoskeleton pulsing with authoritative blue light. The Quarren officer's compound eyes swept over the assembled cadets. Your final wilderness survival assessment begins now. You will deploy to the surface of Hyraxis in teams of 6. Your objective: navigate to the extraction point within 3 planetary cycles using only approved equipment. This assessment will account for 40% of your final tactical survival grade. Ilara glanced at her assigned teammates, suppressing a sigh. She recognized all 5. Torval, the Valkyrie whose plumage shimmered with disdain whenever she spoke. Next 7, a silicon-based lithoid whose density made him practically indestructible. Shen and Lore, twin Tresians who communicated telepathically with each other, but rarely with anyone else. And Melira, a morph whose current form mimicked humanoid shape, but with reflective silver skin. Team 6, Zrilx continued, you will deploy to Sector 14 Gamma. Conditions are currently stable, though meteorological forecasts indicate potential weather fluctuations. Your equipment packages have been loaded. Departure in 15 minutes. As the cadets broke formation to collect their gear, Torval fluttered over to the equipment crates, his crimson plumage bristling with excitement. I'll lead navigation, he announced, pulling out a sophisticated holomapper. Next, your terrain specialist. Twins, you're responsible for food procurement. Melira, security. He paused, eyes finally landing on Ilara. Human, you can carry supplies. Ilara bit back a retort. She'd scored higher than Torval in 3 of 5 survival modules, but the Valkyrie refused to acknowledge it. Instead, she nodded and began methodically checking her personal kit. Compass, multi-tool, water purification tablets, thermal blanket, first aid nanites, and emergency rations. While her teammates marveled at their cutting-edge gear, Ilara quietly slipped an old-fashioned flint and steel into her pocket, a gift from her grandfather who taught her wilderness skills in Earth's Cascade Mountains. The descent to Hyraxis was turbulent but uneventful. As their shuttle broke through the cloud cover, Ilara pressed her face to the viewport, taking in the alien landscape. Hyraxis was predominantly water, with scattered archipelagos of rocky islands covered in vermilion vegetation. The atmosphere was thicker than Earth's, creating a perpetual amber haze on the horizon. Landing in 3 minutes, announced the autopilot. Prepare for deployment. They touched down on a flat expanse of black volcanic rock. The air that rushed in when the hatch opened was warm and heavy with moisture, carrying unfamiliar scents of alien vegetation. Ilara's skin immediately beaded with sweat as she stepped onto the surface of Hyraxis, squinting against the harsh orange sunlight. Extraction point is 17 kilometers northwest, Torval announced, consulting his holomapper. Terrain appears mostly traversable, though we'll need to cross several water channels. Next 7 scanned the horizon, his crystalline structure glinting. Atmospheric pressure is higher than optimal for Valkyrie respiration. We should maintain a moderate pace. The first few hours of hiking passed without incident. The twins foraged successfully, identifying several edible plant species. Melira scouted ahead, her body occasionally liquefying to slip through narrow passages before reforming. Ilara kept pace silently, observing their surroundings with keen attention while the others chatted among themselves. By mid-afternoon, Ilara noticed a shift in the air pressure. The sky toward the west had darkened ominously, and the wind carried a metallic tang she recognized from Earth's hurricane seasons. She stopped, watching the distant cloud formation swirling with unnatural speed. "We should find shelter," she said, breaking her silence. "Those clouds indicate severe weather approaching." Torval scoffed, his head crest rising in irritation. The meteorological forecast indicated only minor fluctuations. Besides, my atmospheric analyzer shows nothing concerning. Technology isn't always reliable, Ilara persisted. The cloud formations and pressure drop suggest. Perhaps on your primitive world, human, Torval interrupted, but Confederation technology is infallible. We continue as planned. An hour later, disaster struck. The storm hit with shocking violence, wind speeds far exceeding the forecasted parameters. Rain fell in stinging horizontal sheets as lightning cracked the sky with electric blue forks. The team struggled forward, but their progress slowed to a crawl. "We need shelter now." Next 7 shouted over the howling wind. Even his dense form struggled against the gale force winds. Ilara pointed toward a cluster of rock formations ahead. There, those formations might provide windbreak. They fought their way to the rocks, collapsing in the relative protection of a shallow cave. Outside, the storm intensified. Lightning struck a nearby tree-like organism, splitting it with a thunderous crack. The vermilion foliage ignited briefly before being extinguished by the torrential rain. "The extraction point is still 12 kilometers away," Melira said, her silvery form rippling with agitation. "This storm was not in our briefing." Shen and Lore communicated silently, their fronds vibrating with distress before Shen spoke. "Water levels are rising rapidly. This area may flood." As if on cue, water began seeping into their shelter, first in rivulets, then in streams. Within minutes, they were ankle-deep in swirling, murky water. "We need higher ground," Ilara said, already gathering their supplies. "This entire area is becoming a floodplain." They abandoned the cave, struggling through the downpour toward a rocky hill visible through the rain. The water rose with alarming speed, soon reaching their knees, then their waists. The current strengthened, threatening to sweep them away. Ilara grabbed Shen's slender appendage when the truncheon slipped, hauling them both against the current. By the time they reached the hill, the valley behind them had transformed into a surging lake. They climbed to the summit, watching in horrified silence as the waters continued to rise, consuming everything below. Their small hill was rapidly becoming an island, and a shrinking one at that. "The mapper isn't functioning," Torval announced, panic edging into his voice as he shook the device. "I can't get a signal to the Academy." "Communications are blocked," Nex 7 confirmed, his usually steady voice wavering. "The storm is generating electromagnetic interference." The twins huddled together, their photosynthetic skin dulling in distress. "We are trapped," they said in unison, an unusual break in their normal communication pattern. Melira stretched her form upward, trying to see beyond the storm. Water in all directions. "We are surrounded." Panic rippled through the group. Their advanced technology, the tools they had always relied upon, was failing them. The extraction point might as well have been in another galaxy. The water continued its inexorable rise, claiming more of their shrinking island with each passing minute. Ilara stood apart, her mind racing as she calculated their options. The others argued, their voices rising in fear and frustration. She tuned them out, scanning their surroundings methodically. There was no rescue coming, not in this storm, not with communications down. If they were going to survive, they needed to act. Her eyes fell on a cluster of fallen vegetation, the tough, fibrous stems of hyraxian plants torn loose by the storm. Then she noticed the buoyant seed pods bobbing in the floodwaters, their hollow structures keeping them afloat. An idea began to form in her mind, drawing on wilderness skills taught by her grandfather, skills considered obsolete in a galaxy of advanced technology. While her teammates argued over diminishing options, Ilara quietly began gathering materials. They had perhaps an hour before the water claimed their position entirely. She would need to work quickly. "What are you doing, human?" Torval demanded, noticing her activity at last. Ilara looked up, her face set with determination. "I'm building us a way out of here." Human ingenuity triumphant. A raft. Nex 7's crystalline form vibrated with skepticism as he watched Ilara lashing together the fibrous hyraxian plant stems. "We're surrounded by a raging flood, and your solution is a primitive floating platform." Ilara didn't pause in her work, her fingers moving with practiced efficiency as she secured another knot. "Unless you can fly or breathe underwater, this is our best option." "This is absurd," Torval scoffed, his plumage flattened against the continuing rain. "Confederation officers don't resort to primitive crafts made of sticks. Those sticks are hydrophobic," Ilara countered, nodding toward the plant material. "They repel water and maintain structural integrity even when saturated. The seed pods provide buoyancy similar to Earth's balsa wood. When bound correctly, they'll support our combined weight." The water had risen to within 2 meters of their position. Their island, once a modest hill, was now barely larger than a standard dormitory room. Time was running out. Melira approached, her silvery form rippling with curiosity. "How do you know this will work?" "I don't," Ilara admitted, testing the strength of a lashed joint. "But I've built similar crafts on Earth. The principles of buoyancy and displacement are universal physics. This will float." To Ilara's surprise, Melira extended a pseudopod and began mimicking Ilara's knot technique on another section. "I will assist. Theoretical arguments waste time we do not have." Reluctantly, the others joined. The twins proved surprisingly adept, their 6 limbs working in perfect coordination. Even Torval contributed, his dexterous talons ideal for manipulating the finer components. Only Nex 7 stood apart, his dense body making him ill-suited for delicate work. As the last light faded from Hyraxis's amber sky, they completed the raft, an 8-meter-long craft with a raised center platform and crude guardrails. Using strips of their emergency thermal blankets, Ilara fashioned rough paddles and a simple rudder. "Water levels have stabilized," Nex 7 announced, monitoring the flood line. "However, our position remains untenable. The storm is moving northeast," Ilara observed, studying the clouds. "If we launch now, we can use the current to carry us northwest, toward the extraction point." Torval frowned, his crest rising with concern. "Without navigation equipment, how can you possibly know which direction is northwest?" Ilara pulled out her compass. Sometimes the oldest technology is the most reliable. Skepticism lingered on their faces as they carefully loaded their remaining supplies onto the raft. The water now lapped at their feet, leaving them no choice but to trust Ilara's creation. One by one, they boarded the craft, distributing their weight as she directed. "Nex, you're our heaviest. Sit here in the center," Ilara instructed. Twins, opposite sides. "Torval and Melira, take these paddles. When I give the word, push us off." The moment of launch was tense. The raft dipped alarmingly as it took their weight, water seeping through the plant fiber floor. But it held, bobbing on the dark floodwaters like a primitive island. "It's working," Melira whispered, her silvery form reflecting the lightning that still occasionally illuminated the sky. "For now," Torval muttered, gripping his paddle with obvious discomfort. Ilara positioned herself at the rear with the rudder, using her compass to maintain their bearing. The current swept them along at a surprising speed, carrying them through what had once been a valley but was now a surging waterway. The rain had lessened to a steady drizzle, but occasional gusts of wind threatened to push them off course. The first real test came an hour into their journey. The sound reached them before they saw it, a low, thunderous roar that grew louder with each passing moment. "What is that?" Shen asked, Franz trembling. "Rapids," Ilara replied grimly. "The floodwaters are cascading over terrain drops. Everyone, secure yourselves to the raft. Use your harness straps." The twins looked terrified. "We cannot swim," Lore admitted. "Our species sinks." "You won't need to swim," Ilara assured them, though her own heart raced. "The raft will hold." They rounded a bend, and the sight stole their breath. Ahead, the floodwaters churned into white foam as they crashed over a series of rocky shelves. Their peaceful drift was about to become a chaotic plunge. "Brace yourselves," Ilara shouted as they hit the first drop. The raft bucked like a living thing, water spraying over them in icy sheets. Ilara fought with the rudder, struggling to keep them from spinning. A section of guardrail snapped, nearly pitching Malira into the churning waters before she liquefied her lower body to anchor herself more securely. "We're breaking apart," Torval cried as another lashing gave way. Ilara saw the danger instantly. Their craft was twisting, the front right corner taking the brunt of the impact as they slammed into each cascade. Without intervention, they would disintegrate before reaching calm water. "Nex," she called. "We need weight on the left front. Now." The lithoid understood immediately, crawling forward with deliberate movements that threatened to capsize them with each shift. He positioned his dense form exactly where Ilara indicated, counterbalancing the forces threatening to tear them apart. They plunged down 2 more drops, the raft groaning but holding. Then disaster struck, as they crashed through the final cascade, a massive log-like object, some alien equivalent of driftwood, rammed into their side. The impact sent Shen tumbling over the edge with a terrified cry. Without hesitation, Ilara dove after the Trescian, hitting the icy water with a shock that nearly stole her breath. The current dragged them both downward, spinning them in its grip. Through the murky water, she saw Shen's Franz going limp. The Trescian was already losing consciousness. Ilara kicked powerfully, fighting the current until her lungs screamed for air. Her fingers closed around one of Shen's appendages, and she pulled the alien close, kicking upward with her remaining strength. They broke the surface with a desperate gasp, Ilara coughing up water while keeping Shen's face above the surface. "There!" Lore screamed, pointing downstream where the raft had come to rest in an eddy. Ilara swam one-armed, dragging the unconscious Trescian through the swirling waters. Nex and Torval reached over the side, hauling them both aboard. Ilara collapsed on the sodden platform, chest heaving. "Shen's not breathing," Lore wailed, cradling their twin. Drawing on her emergency medical training, Ilara crawled to the Trescian's side. "Their respiratory system is different," she gasped. "We need to stimulate their gas exchange membranes." She pressed firmly on specific points of Shen's thorax, using a technique she'd studied but never performed. After 3 tense cycles, the Trescian convulsed, expelling water from specialized respiratory sacs before drawing a shuddering breath. "You saved them," Lore whispered, Franz vibrating with emotion. "How did you know what to do?" "I studied xenobiology," Ilara replied simply, too exhausted for elaboration. As dawn broke over Hyraxis, the floodwaters carried them into a vast, lake-like expanse. In the distance, a familiar silhouette rose against the amber sky, the Academy's extraction vessel, its position marked by a pulsing beacon. "There's our extraction point," Torval said, his voice subdued. "Exactly where you said it would be." They paddled the remaining distance in weary silence. As they approached the extraction vessel, a hatch opened, and Commander Zrilks emerged, compound eyes widening at the sight of their makeshift craft. "Explain." the commander demanded once they were aboard, his exoskeleton pulsing with confusion. Torval stepped forward. "Sir, we encountered a catastrophic weather event that disabled our equipment and caused unprecedented flooding. We would have perished if not for—" He hesitated, then straightened. "If not for Cadet Chen's extraordinary survival skills and ingenuity." The commander's compound eyes swiveled to Ilara. "You built this craft?" "Yes, sir," she responded, "using local materials and basic physical principles. Without technology. Sometimes, sir, the absence of technology demands innovation." Later, as they returned to the Academy's orbital facility, Ilara found Torval standing at a viewport, gazing down at the storm-racked surface of Hyraxis. "I underestimated you," the Valkyrie said without preamble. "And by extension, I underestimated humanity." Ilara joined him at the viewport. "It's a common misconception. Your species lacks our technological advancement, our evolutionary advantages, even our longevity," Torval continued. "Yet you adapt. You observe, improvise, and overcome with whatever materials are at hand. It's remarkable." "It's necessity," Ilara corrected. "Throughout our history, humans have faced challenges with limited resources. We learn to make do, to find solutions where none seem obvious." Torval's plumage rippled in what Ilara now recognized as thoughtful consideration. "The Academy teaches us to rely on technology and protocol. Perhaps there's value in your primitive approaches after all." Ilara smiled faintly. "Not primitive, just different. Technology fails. Species-specific advantages become disadvantages in certain environments. But problem-solving, through adaptability, that works anywhere." The Valkyrie extended a wing-like appendage in a gesture Ilara had never seen him offer before, the traditional Valkyrie acknowledgement of respect. "The Confederation has much to learn from humans," he said. "And I, it seems, have much to learn from you." 3 days later, Commander Zrilk summoned Ilara to the Tactical Training Center. To her surprise, the room contained not only her teammates but also several high-ranking Academy officials. "Cadet Chen," the commander began, his exoskeleton glowing with formal blue patterns, "your performance during the Hyraxis survival assessment has been thoroughly reviewed. Your actions exemplify the innovative thinking and adaptability the Galactic Confederation seeks in its officers." He gestured to a holographic display showing a detailed analysis of her raft design. "The Academy is implementing a new training module based on your improvised watercraft. All cadets will now learn basic construction techniques using naturally available materials, a skill set we have overlooked in our focus on technological solutions." Ilara stood straighter, pride warming her chest. "Furthermore," the commander continued, "you have been selected to lead an advanced survival seminar for senior cadets, focusing on adaptation when technology fails." From the back of the room, Nex 7 spoke up. "The humans saved us all, without a single piece of advanced technology. Perhaps we have become too dependent on our devices." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled officials. "Your assessment grade," Commander Zrilks concluded, "is a perfect score. The first awarded to any cadet in this module in 17 years. As the briefing concluded, Ilara was surrounded by her teammates, no longer distant or disdainful, but genuinely curious about her methods. Even Torval asked questions about the knot-tying techniques she had employed. That evening, as Ilara recorded a message to her grandfather back on Earth, she reflected on how quickly perceptions had changed. She had arrived at the Academy as a curiosity, a representative of a primitive species with little to contribute to the advanced Confederation. Now she was being recognized for the very skills that had once been dismissed as obsolete. The irony wasn't lost on her. In a galaxy of incredible technology and evolutionary specialization, it was basic human adaptability that had proven most valuable. The flood had washed away more than the terrain of Hyraxis. It had swept aside prejudice and preconception, leaving behind a new appreciation for what humanity brought to the stars. Not advanced technology or biological advantages, but the simple, powerful ability to face the unknown with creativity and determination. It wasn't the first time humans had been underestimated in the galaxy, and Ilara was certain it wouldn't be the last. But each time they proved their worth, the gap between primitive newcomers and respected allies narrowed just a little more. As she finished her message home, she added one final thought. Grandpa, it turns out those outdated skills you taught me aren't so outdated after all, even among the stars.